Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bilingual Find Your Place podcast. Desiring to show that it is possible to make unpopular choices, even out of the norm, and be happy, wishing to prove that happiness comes from choosing yourself rather than giving in to popular pressure, I receive people who have made the best of a situation that put them in the different box. My name is Stephanie Bergo, and I'm the host of this show. I've been working as a potential catalyst for more than 10 years, and my mission is to allow people to give themselves the right to be all that they are, and thus believe that their dreams are achievable. Welcome to these interviews. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Find Your Podcast interviews. I'm super happy today. It's an English one, and I'm happy to welcome Joy Overstreet, which we don't know each other yet. I've seen you on social media, and you were interested in sharing a part of your life. And what you shared to me was very, very interesting. So I'm super thrilled to have you here. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
I'm delighted to be here with you.
So can we start? I know it's not conventional, but can I start by asking you how old you are?
82.
Just that is amazing. So first, you're breaking all my, how would I say that? All my...
Age perceptions,
yes.
expectations.
Yeah. Yes, clearly. I'm like very, very impressed about using the technology, being very comfortable at it. Yeah, so just that for me is incredible, and it shakes my beliefs. And I'm like, okay, so that means that some people in your generation loves or works or use all the technology. And I think, like we were saying at the just before the interview, my part of my family is in France, and some of my uncles and that are 75 and 78 are using those social media to keep in touch with us that are in Canada. So I think it's a great tool. I would be very, very interested in you talking a bit about your path, because we've started the conversation prior by, I've had so many jobs and so many like change of path that I would love to hear you about.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to meet somebody who has had many different passions and careers, because I always felt that there was something wrong with me, that I had friends in college who were like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. And they were, and they are still. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And so I started out in music, and then I went into being a food writer and raising kids. And then I went into health education. I had my own business as a health educator. And then I went into computers.
Oh, wow.
And so, well, I that started, I mean, it's this whole trippy thing. I started, I wanted to do a gift for my parents for their 50th wedding anniversary. I wanted to do their story. And so I I interviewed them and recorded them telling their stories. And their stories were so interesting, I decided it should be a book for them. But that meant, this was 1986, and I had to figure out how to make a book, because I wanted to typeset it, and I wanted to look exactly like I wanted it to look. And we had all these photos in our family that I wanted to have a picture, at least one or two pictures on each page. So I had to learn how to do what we used, sort of the version of, I guess it's Adobe InDesign. I had to learn how to use a version of that kind of thing back in 1986. And I got so interested in the software that and the computing complications, that I went to work for a couple of young guys who had a computer they actually built and sold computers, and I did tech training and writing user manuals, and I found that fascinating. And then my husband and I got, I mean, I'm probably leaving out a few things too, but after then we moved. That's right, we moved, so I had to leave that job, and I trained as a feng shui consultant because
Oh,
I was
wow.
very interested in that and how it affected how home organization and home furniture arranging affects our our sense of comfort and safety and flow and so forth. And from that, I got interested in color, and now I'm a color consultant. But I'm also a writer. I've been a writer. That's the one consistent thing through everything. So
That's amazing. And would you say that in your generation, it's very unconventional?
yes, yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that I've done have sort of been in response to a shift that had happened in my life. Like I started the weight loss program after my first husband died. He was very young. We were young, and that was an outgrowth of my dealing with my own weight and giving up dieting long ago. This was 1975, long before mindful eating and a mind shift was a thing. You know what? I'm going to have to decline that. I got a call. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. Now I've lost you. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
It's perfect.
Okay. Where was I?
So it was you were telling me
the business was, so it was a response to my own needing to give up dieting because it was making me crazy, and I didn't have time or energy to be crazy when I was trying to raise two little kids by myself. So that was a response to an unexpected change in my life. And then after my second husband and I divorced, I took a trip. I just got in my car and took a trip all around the country with my dog for 2 months, and had never been alone ever.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what that was like. And so there are things like that. I don't tend to make shifts unless something outside bumps me and causes me to do that. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Am I on the right path? And maybe I want to change direction here.
But that's very interesting because many people react to changes or to bump, like you say, by remaining in places they don't like, or by being scared of the change. But what I see in your path is completely the opposite. Like women were less working in those first years. Then you become a widow very young with two little kids, and you had to figure out, and finally you became an entrepreneur, which is not the easier path.
No.
Clearly is not. And then you changed. And so is it more of those things happening to you is a good in French we say prétexte, is a good
pretext
reaction, well, yeah, to change or to reflect? Or would you say normally everything that changes in your life is a good extension of reflection for you?
Some of the times it's been kicking and screaming, that when we moved to the Northwest after my second husband had a nervous breakdown. He ended up in a mental hospital, and I did not want to leave my comfortable life selling computers and doing the thing with my friends who I'd had for years, decades. I didn't want to do that. But once I got here, it was like, okay, now what? And that's so the shifts are not always easy, but
Mm,
it's like it's an opportunity. And when you move, for instance, from one community to another quite far away, it's an opportunity to reframe who you are and what you do. So I've just
mm.
had these opportunities, and I like trying new things. I like learning. I'm always curious. I mean, I'm super curious.
Mm. Yeah,
So
it shows when you explain your path and the different industries in which you worked, in which you've been interested in. And would you say, because sometimes it's a real choice, I mean, like you reflect on something and you choose to go that way or that way. What I heard from what you just said is sometimes it's not exactly your choice. It's like life is giving you lemon, you have to do lemonade with it, and you get you got to do the best with what you had to do, because you seems like a very positive person and always looking to improve and be better and love the things
mhm,
you do. Would you say
mhm,
you're
mhm.
strongly positive person?
I guess I must be. I guess, uh, yeah. It's my. It's funny because once upon a time, my father used to call me. This is a term you probably don't have in French, but a killjoy, because I was always saying no. You know,
Oh,
I was a very resistant child. I did not like being told what to do, and I would say, no, that's a bad idea. I don't like that. I don't want to. And a very interesting thing happened to me after my husband died. My first husband died. Um, I was pretty overwhelmed. I mean, the kids were very young. They were 3 and 6 when he died, and um, so I was always stressed because
mm,
I was trying to run a business and raise kids, and it was a crazy time. And so my kids would ask me, you know, Mom, can I do this? Can I have this? Can I go there? And I was always saying no. You know, mainly it was like, no, don't, just like,
don't
I'll go
add
back.
that on top of
Don't
everything
add it.
else.
You're right. It was like, no. And then they would say, well, but, you know, and I go, all right, fine, we can do that. But my first response was always no. And my daughter and I were on a walk one evening, and she turned to me and she said, Mom, why do you always say no? And that just was
Mm,
the worst thing I'd ever heard. I mean,
yeah.
it just cut me. It cut me. And I came across a book shortly after that, called Improv Wisdom, which is about the tools of
Mm,
improvisational theater, and how you can use that in your life in general to
mm,
learn to say yes. Because the first rule of improv is to say yes, and then to add to that. And I took some improv classes, and it was life changing. I realized
mm.
that that life is change. You never
Yeah.
know what's going to come at you, and so the only response when life throws you lemons or whatever it throws you is to say, okay, yes, here it is. Now what? You know.
Mm. Do the
And so
best
that
out
was
of whatever comes.
right. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, because your story is not an easy story. I mean, sometimes people think that happy people or happy elder people are had an easy life or had no difficulties, and that's something I also want to break. It's a choice. Like it's a constant choice to choose happiness and joy over
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like the
That's true.
difficulties.
That's true. And I think that getting, you know, if you set a goal and you get there, you achieve the thing, that's great for at least an hour or a day. And then it's like, okay, now what? And so um, my preference is to enjoy all the steps. And then when you get there, it's just like, okay, now what? And it's just part of it. But when you're looking to achieve a goal in order to feel happy, that's
Mm-hmm.
it won't make a difference.
Yes. One of my mentors says, one foot in gratitude, one foot in desire. And
Oh, I
I
like that.
I loved it the first time I heard it. I was like, that's exactly it. So instead of having an objective and being happy for, like you said, an hour, I'm always happy of everything, every day, small things, even in difficult days. There's always some stuff. The sun was shining, the kids were happy to see me or whatever. And sometimes there's also a difficult part of the day, but being always in gratitude helped me see what are the amazing things around me, and one foot in desire helped me continue to climb wherever I want to go. And for me, there's no top to this. Like every day is a
Yeah.
constant renewal.
Yes. Well, and once you get to a particular goal, there's, then you can see, if you're climbing a mountain, you get to the top of the mountain and then you can see some other mountains around you. And you're like, oh, that's one over there. And that looks interesting. And that looks interesting. Um, I, I think it would be very sad just to climb up one mountain and just stay there at the top. And
Yeah, clearly, but for some people, it's their path and that's what they choose. And like, is it a choice like to do the same thing and to follow like the path you had planned for you? Or is it because some people think that we don't have choice? They think, like I hear often, like that's life. You have to go to job, to work, and with the kids and everything. But in my world, so many people are doing incredible things, having aside sometimes kids, business and stuff. And as we learn, sometimes it goes slower when you have all the family things and the money things going around at the same time as a project, but it still goes for many, many people.
yes, right. I think midlife has got to be the hardest time. When in your 30s and 40s, when you've got everything going on at the same time. You've got the kids, you've got the job that you're trying to get better at, and you've got maybe aging parents, and you're taking care of a house and maybe building onto it, and just like everything is going on at once. And women in particular are not supported enough with childcare and all of that stuff, house care, to not be overwhelmed. I look at my daughter and my daughter-in-law, and I guess I look back at my own life and think, how the hell did I do that? I mean, I can't even imagine. And so it's no wonder that people over 50 start to enjoy themselves more, because it's not as hard, you know. I'm not responsible for very much right now. I've got my small place and I can do what I want when I want. And it's like, this is good.
Yeah, and so hearing you saying that is like, I had a conversation with a friend who's 60, I'm 40. When I was 21, I had my first daughter, and I was the only one among my friends who were mom already. And I was studying in university, having Lorelai, and I met that woman at that time. She was close to 40 and having also her first child. So we had two different time, but the same reality. So it about the kids. And it was funny because it was exactly what we were talking about, because I was studying, working, raising Lorelai, and she was 2, but another step in her life, money was not a problem anymore because she had worked for 20 years, having an amazing career, an amazing business. So she was able to take time for the business when she want, take time with the baby when she want. And I was much more like trying to manage everything, and I was very young, so I had the energy at that time. And 10 years after I had my second baby, a son. And those 10 years were
Make a difference.
super helpful because I finished university during those 10 years. I had the good partner to have a second one. And so you're right about the energy. And now that I'm 40, my kids are 18, 8, and 6. So they're not too small, but they're still small.
Yeah.
And this friend, his son is the same as my daughter, so he's 18 and she's 60. And today we so often have conversation about chill out, Steph. Chill out, take your time. Everything's come at the right moment. Don't try to rush everything at the same time. And sometimes it's very good for me to reflect on what she says. I'm very impressed.
Well, also, I think, you know, the older you get, the more years of experience you have. And when you're 20, you've had 20 years of life and 20 years of experience. And so things are much bigger, relatively speaking, much bigger in your life because you've only lived 20 years. When you've lived 80 years or 60 years or 40 years, each individual episode or thing that happens in your life takes a smaller percentage, and so it has less importance, I think, than it once did. You know, and things that happen to you when you're 6 years old, they're huge.
You're right. And my daughter's gonna turn 18 in a couple of weeks, and I remember clearly when I was 18, I dreamt of that day for 4 years. I think 14 to 18, I was like, I'm gonna get there. And then I got there and I was like, oh, well, I got there. And at 21, I had Lorelai, and I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be very, very long before she's an adult. Time seems so far away, those 18 years, and we're like a glimpse away from that moment. And I'm like, where did those 18 years went? I'm like, okay, so I just turned 40. I thought at that time, I was like, okay, when I be 40, I'll be free and my daughter is gonna be an adult. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not the case.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, it's an adventure. It's all an adventure. And I think if you can maintain that attitude of, oh, here's the next chapter, here's the next if you're like, think of your life as kind of being in a pinball machine, you know, pinball machines where that your ball hits a peg that you hadn't expected to be there, and then it goes that way and then it goes this way, and you just have to roll with it.
Being open to what life has to bring. That's interesting. And it's super interesting. What if you would have to reflect on those past years, would you do things differently?
You know, I don't know if I'd have been capable of doing things differently, because when my husband died, you know, I had expected my life would go forward kind of as my mother's life had been. I would have been I'd have met the man my soulmate, and we would have married and had 2 kids and lived happily ever after. And I would have been a very good homemaker, and I was, and all those things. And then suddenly he got sick, and like, wait a minute, that
wasn't part of the plan.
That was not part of the plan. I mean, nobody in my family gets sick. Nobody dies, and he did. And I don't know if I would have been capable of dealing with it if I could have gone back in time. I mean, if me today had gone back, I would have been dealt with it differently. But me at 30, 32, those are all the tools I had, which were not many. You know, the longer we live, the more tools we have, and the more experiences we can draw on. So would I change anything? I don't know that I could.
That's
you
a
know?
very, very interesting reflection, because so often I tell to people or my clients in coaching or that it's not healthy to reflect on a decision you've taken years ago and regret some stuff. For
Yeah.
example, talking about marriage, I have clients that decided to divorce a couple of years ago, and they're still reflecting on, was it the good choice or not the good choice? And exactly as you just said, I'm like, it's impossible to use the tool you have now 10 years after to say,
Yes.
well, if I have known that, I would have do things differently. It's
Yeah.
when you took the decision, all the tools and the environment, the things related were as is, and you
Yes.
thought at that time it was the best decision. So looking at it 10 years
Yeah.
after,
Yeah.
wondering if it was the good thing to do, I think it's not that healthy.
Yeah.
um
You know, I've I have been reading and learning over the years many things, and just um, becoming much more of a feminist than I ever was. I always thought of myself as one, you know, but reading about feminism, reading about racism, reading about ageism, reading about and experiencing also myself, thinking, "Oh, if I had only known, if I had only had those tools, those communication skills, those,
mm,
if I'd only realized back then." But it's useless. I mean, I think that the marriage that I got divorced from would have been a lot better. I don't know. I think we still would have gotten divorced, but I think if I had known some things about communication, if I'd understood the reasons I was feeling resentful had to do with the fact that I hadn't set any boundaries. Um,
mm.
you know, but it's too late. It's, you know, should another guy come along, I don't see him right now. I would do it differently.
Mm,
But I can't retroactively, although I do think about that and wonder
mm,
how things would have been if I had been able to, if I had been a better communicator, uh, or known how to elicit better communication from my partner.
mm.
But I didn't.
And you've talked a bit about setting boundaries. Would you say it, if you had to recommend something to people a bit younger or much younger, would it be one of these, like setting boundaries? And
Well, so in both marriages that I had, I found myself doing a lot, doing, felt like everything. My
Mhm.
first husband had his own business and he was working all the time. And then he was sick and I was just overwhelmed and I was resentful. And I think if I, and the same thing with the second husband, actually, he was mentally ill. And so there was a lot of things that he wouldn't do. And so again, I was overcompensating by doing more and then feeling pissed off. And I think if I had been able to say to myself, instead of blaming him, if I had said to myself, I have just got to stop doing all the things so that I don't feel this way.
Mm,
Um, I can't change how much he works or how depressed he is, but I can change uh, how much I'm willing to double to do double duty,
mm,
that kind of a thing. And so, you know, asking for help, I just didn't ask for help. I could have asked for help, or I could have said, I'm not doing. You know, we're just going to eat frozen dinners. I'm not cooking this kind of meal every night, um,
mm.
and I'm not going to clean the house every week. I'm going to do it every other week. Uh,
Yeah, that's
that
very
sort of thing.
interesting. And as a mom of three, and I've been, well, we're still married. Um, I, my daughters, uh, dad, well, the older one, we were very young, we got separated, and then I met my husband. But it's and as I told you, I turned 40, and it's one of the consideration I saw in the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, with the pandemic and everything, with the like I have a job, a business, the kids and everything. I saw that too. I was like, oh, okay. So I feel very often overwhelmed by everything around, the kids, the job, the business, okay. So, and at first I was looking in his yard, watching for the answer, and I was like, and finally, as you said, I realized that if instead of trying to make it perfect for everyone, I would only listen to myself, it would be better. And one of the first thing we change is I don't like very much cooking, and for me it's very heavy, like what to buy, where, like what to cook, and we're five. There's no one, like it's always, there's always someone not happy about the. So finally, we decided to use boxes where it come packaged and you can cook whatever's in it, and some
Exactly.
stuff are
Right.
frozen. And
Yeah.
honestly, it took me 6 months to do that change, because in my head I was believing that to be a great mother you need to cook.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when
Exactly.
working with a coach, I unleashed that. I was like, clearly it doesn't make me a better mom if I'm being angry all the time I'm cooking and then
Exactly.
stuff for the rest of the
Yeah.
night. So finally we changed it, and
Yeah.
it did
Yeah. So the
miracles.
anger and the resentment is a clue that that you have to look within rather than hoping that they are going to change, because they probably are not going to change. And so uh, it's becomes on us to say, that's I'm not going there. I'm not going to do that. Uh, I need to feel better about being in this relationship, and the only thing that's going to make me feel better is if I'm not feeling resentful, and that means I'm not doing so much. And so um, you can take the kids to soccer practice. I'm not going to do it. Or you can arrange for someone to do it if you can't do it.
Yeah,
But I'm not
exactly.
going to worry about it.
And I think it goes further than only relationship, well, couple relationship. It's the same for colleagues, bosses, like when you're able to fix your own boundaries. Like, for example, I won't work after 5 because I have the kids. So if he asks or she asks, well, I'm sorry, it's not possible. And sometimes it's us that are not very good at, like, it's one thing to say we have boundaries, it's something else making them respect, like, or
Yeah.
making us respect our own boundaries.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's
That's
super
true.
super
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would be super happy if you want to talk to me about your new passion. You said you're now a color specialist.
A
What
color
do you
consultant.
do?
So have you heard of personal color analysis?
Yes, a bit.
Yes. So um, I had my colors done in 1971, a long time
Oh,
ago when it
wow.
was first. Yeah. And I've always loved color, and I always wanted to learn how to do it, but there was nobody to teach me. And I found when I was doing feng shui that the things that I enjoyed working with most was the color of the surroundings, and making the choosing paint colors. And so I was doing that for several years, and then discovered that there was somebody who was training people to do personal color analysis in the same very artistic style that I had learned. I mean, that I'd had my own colors done in, and it was. You've probably heard of Color Me Beautiful. It was not that. This is much more technical. You do people one at a time. For it takes like 2.5 hours to get the right palette. And um,
Can you
uh,
explain a bit more for those who are not familiar with this? What?
I'm. Hold. Is it okay if I just run and grab a thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll just. Yeah. I didn't expect we would go here. So, okay. So, so
I find that very unusual and very interesting.
so the first thing I have to discern, well, I interview people to find out kind of their personality, because everything goes together, your personality, your color harmony. And so and then I look at the color qualities, how warm or cool the hair is, how saturated in color, how deep the color, the skin tones, and the eye color are the main things. And then figure I have 24 different palettes that are sample palettes that I start with, and then I figure out where to start with the person based on a cursory analysis of their warm qualities and cool qualities. And for example, this is kind of, yeah, this is a sample palette that is closest to me. And I'm what's known as a summer, a rose tone summer. So can you see that?
Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
amazing. So it fits with your glasses and with your.
oh yeah, right. The red is in here. So and these are arranged. These are dark neutrals. These are lighter neutrals. This is my eye color. These are my skin tones, my reds, and these are dramatics, and they get more subtle down here. And then there's metals and pastels and so forth. But you can see how these are quite cool in psychologically cool colors, as opposed to. So what was interesting, when I had my colors done at first, I had very dark hair. I wanted to be a winter, and that's the high contrast, very saturated colors. This is what I wanted to be.
And you're using it to dress, to
do my house, to everything.
Oh yeah, to everything.
Yeah.
And it fits the personality.
Yeah, so these are the colors of the winter, which is very different. And I do have some of this quality, but if I wear colors that are too saturated, what happens is that they wear me. And what you want is
they're outshine you.
You want to shine. Yes, right. And so, and the other thing is that when you have your colors, you know how to use them intentionally. So if I'm meeting in person with somebody and I want them to think of me as credible, I will wear my eye color, which is a sort of a greeny blue, gray blue, because our eyes, the other person's eyes, are naturally attracted to repetition. So if I were wearing a gray blue, you would be more inclined to look up to see more of the same color. When I wear my skin tones, I am more approachable, because skin tones are human color, and so they're often much kinder than white. For instance, many people don't look good in white for a variety of reasons, but I can now wear white because my hair is white, and so if I wear white, and I often do, it again, people's attention is drawn up to your face area because you're wearing a color that's repeated.
And do you think about all of this every morning when you wake up? Like, for example, what do I have to do today, and how do I want to dress regarding those?
Yes. You think, do I want to make a big, when I walk in the room, do I want people to go, whoa, or do I want them to feel comfortable with me? And I don't usually wear red on an interview. It's pretty powerful, but
I love it.
That's what I was wearing this morning. So
you look very bright and shiny. I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, so the thing I love about it is that I get to spend 2 or 3 hours with somebody I've never met before, talking the questions I ask are very personal, and I'm 6 inches from them, looking at them. So it's a very intense experience, and I get to feel very close to my clients in a very short period of time, and I love that.
That's very cool. And if, for example, well, you're married, you live with someone else, is it better to do the color of both people, like to choose, for example, the color of the house, or how does it work?
It's interesting. There are often ways to compromise in the main body of the house. But if he's got an office, he can do that over there, and you can do your thing in your space. But it's also important to take into account the environment itself. For instance, I live in a very industrial building. It was an old warehouse many 100 years ago, and so the space is very high ceilings and metal ductwork, pipes. And then I wanted it to be more feminine, because I didn't want to have white and steel. And so, I don't know if you've seen, my wall color is kind of my blush tone, and on the couch is the
so
couch
everything's agency.
Yes, right. And then over here, the gray, whoops, I got the silver, the pipe. I don't know if you can see the pipe.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the fridge and the pipe,
painted gray on the wall behind the pipe, so that it would kind of go away, because I didn't want people to look at the pipe. And so if I paint the wall behind it the same color, it's less obvious. So you can use color in many ways. I live in a very small place. My hall is a navy blue, because I want people to move through that area, because my bed is there also into the brighter main part of the apartment.
That's super interesting. And are you doing that like as a hobby, or is it a business?
That's part of it was part of the feng shui, making the house feel comfortable and safe and personal. Having art that is personal is an important part, not buying what the interior designer says you should have, but having art that is made by yourself or friends, or I've got
that talks to your art.
Everything's personal. I mean, I've done a lot of photographs, and I have art by people that I know, prints, and I've got a picture, or I've got several pictures that my children have done over the years.
That's incredible. You're honestly, and I wanted to, you're an amazing lady. Hopefully I will wish to be as interesting as you are when I cross your age, and interested in so many things, and loving with people and sharing your stories. I'm super impressed.
You probably will be, since you're doing what you're doing now. I think you're setting a good stage. So I have written a book. I wrote a book based on the first on the weight loss program that I created many years ago, because I still don't think there's a program out there that incorporates all the experiences that we did. It's an experiential learning process, as opposed to a diet, and it's called the cherry pie paradox. And
wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, and a friend illustrated it. There's a bunch of really fun illustrations in it. So it's called the cherry pie paradox: the surprising path to diet freedom and lasting weight loss. And I haven't been on a diet since 1975.
And when did you wrote that book?
I wrote this 2 years. Well, it came out a year ago. I started writing it during the pandemic. I realized I'd promised myself when I left Thin Within that I would write the book. But then I remarried and had another baby, and it's like was off doing other things like we do. And so as my 80th birthday was approaching, I thought, I had better get started on this thing, because I felt like I needed to share this process with the world, and so I finished it, and I uh, just 2 weeks ago the workbook came out that goes with it. So
Oh, that's cool. I love books with workbooks. I always
yeah,
buy both of them because I love
yeah,
writing and
yeah.
reflecting on
Because
stuff.
the workbook, the book is a fun read, and people read it and they enjoy it, and they have aha moments and realizing this and realizing that. But realizations and aha moments are only worth so much. You have to actually do the work, and if you're
Yeah,
somebody who's had a weight problem, it took years to create it, and so it's probably going to take a long time to undo all the damage. And
yeah, clearly.
so the workbook works people through the steps.
And if people want to buy it, where can they find
It's
it?
on Amazon. It's available. I have Canadian purchasers, I know that, and I have French purchasers, although it's not in French yet. Yeah.
It's perfect. It's super interesting. And like after achieving all that you did, do you still have dreams and stuff you want to achieve, like short, medium, long term?
Yes, I wanted to write this book so that I fulfilled that promise to myself.
Hmm.
And now I'm working on another one.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Very
it's
cool.
about taking that sabbatical trip around the country after leaving my second husband. Uh, and I do think that taking time off, really far away, is a great idea, and women don't do it, almost never do it. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah, clearly. And how old were you when you did that trip?
61.
So your kids were all,
My youngest had just left for college. Uh,
oh, so you've
yeah,
waited for
I
him to
waited.
leave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's super cool, and I'm pretty sure it's been life-changing. And
It
although
was.
I've dreamed about it very often, like it's true, when you became a mom, you have responsibilities, and maybe after, if nothing changed, I mean, you're already in a routine with husband, so it's very courageous that you did that.
Yeah. Well, I needed to hear myself think,
Mm,
because after having kids and husbands at home all the time, I mean, I was doing other things besides that, but it's just like I
yeah,
never had
noises.
noises, never had a chance to really think for myself. And I was afraid when I left that all the noise that I'd had in my head was going to make me, that I'd get out there on the road and I would like go psychotic or something.
Yeah.
And and the silence was the best.
Delightful.
It was delightful. It was delightful. I drove around the country for 2 months with my dog, and it was the best thing ever. Gave me a chance to think and write, and just look. You know,
I
I had
imagine
no
you
agenda.
you 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 learned stuff about yourself during that trip.
I learned I could be alone, which I had no idea.
Mm.
No idea. Um, and now I'm still alone, and I like it. You know. Yeah.
That's super interesting. Thanks a lot for taking that time to share with me your amazing story. I'm super, super, super impressed and inspired.
Well, you can do it. You probably will. Sorry, I'm not going to be around to hear in 40 years what you're like.
Yes, but I I do the podcast also because I like having inspiration, and I feel in every people I met some stuff that inspire me, that make me think, and that discussion is clearly one of the best of the week.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been fun talking with you.
Oh, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. So Thanks everyone for being there. I hope you enjoy Joy as much as I did. If you want to read the book, which I find is very pretty for those listening only, or you go on YouTube to see the cover, or you go directly on Amazon to buy it, and it's very interesting. Thanks, Joyce, for your time today. It's
I do have
amazing.
a website, so they can also find me there. It's just joyoverstreet.com. So I'm
Perfect.
there.
That's the best, maybe
Yeah.
a good way too. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot. See you soon. Don't hesitate to put a question or comments underneath. I will be happy to answer you. Thanks and have a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode. Come back next week with another guest that has a fascinating story to tell and that will inspire you to take action towards your own path. If you like this show, I'm inviting you to leave a 5-star review. That way, it helps us to spread the work and fulfill our mission even more. The podcast is also available in a video format on YouTube. You'll find it under the same name, Trouve ta place, Find your place, under Catalyseur de Potentiel. Let's connect on social media. You'll find me as Stéphanie Bergaud or Catalyseur de Potentiel on Facebook or Instagram. Have a great day.